Jamaica, 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 land we love. So, hi there. Good afternoon, Caribbeanologists. Out here on seemed like it was a nicer day earlier today, but it's gotten a little cooler now that the day is going down. But considering where I'm living, this is considered relatively nice weather. Lots of madness going on around, and I'm holding the microphone close to my mouth because the wind is blowing pretty hard, so I just don't want it to come through with distorted sound. But today I'm going to bring up a topic that I'm sure is going to maybe ruffle some feathers, maybe get some people upset at me. I'm hoping that doesn't happen, but if it does, I really don't mind. I've been on this internet for years now. Been in 1,027 debates, so I know how it goes. But I just figured it was a topic that I was going to bring up today, that I wanted to talk about, that has come up over the years. And I've always found myself caught in the middle somewhere. Okay? Anyway, first of all, for my Jamaican friends who are watching right now, I am not Jamaican. I am from the Virgin Islands, as you can see. It's our flag up there. So I am from about, 800 miles, 850 miles or so, to the east of Jamaica in the Caribbean. So I'm from the U.S. Virgin Islands. I'm not a Jamaican, but I'm here going to be talking about Jamaicans today, which already right off the bat may cause some people to start perking up to their things like, let me hear what I want to say about Jamaicans. All right? Anyway, I'm bringing this up because this is one of the things that I've found myself caught up in many times. And that is, and this is supposed to be friendly, okay? So I don't want it to get all wild and crazy, but if you guys want to go ahead that route, feel free. Anyway, the thing that I've been caught up in between has always been finding myself in a position where I've got to defend both sides, explain both sides, and try to make sense of it all to certain people. And what am I speaking about? What I'm speaking about is this somewhat love-hate relationship that goes on between Jamaica, Jamaicans, and the other Caribbean islands, namely the English-speaking Caribbean islands. If you ask them Jamaicans, they just simply say that the small island people, that they're jealous of Jamaicans. And if you ask the people from the other Caribbean islands, they think Jamaicans are full of themselves, that they're arrogant. Jamaicans, on the other hand, feel as though they have a right to be arrogant. So I get myself caught up in between this, because here is where problem number one comes up. For some of us who are from other Caribbean islands and we speak English, and we may have a particular dialect, accent, whatever you may want to call it, and we may be speaking to certain people, and the first thing they say, hey, you're from Jamaica, man? Or you come from Jamaica? Or sometimes I've been in the situation like this before, where you could be around Jamaicans for years and they think that you are a Jamaican. I had that situation with me before down in South Florida, where I played basketball for years with some Jamaican guys. And here was the interesting thing. First of all, I understood everything they said. And because I was around them, I would sometimes break off into my own little raw patois as best as I can possibly do it. And one year, how I knew they thought I was from Jamaica was one year I went to St. Thomas, which is where I'm from, St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. I went on vacation. And when I came back, they hadn't seen me in a while. So they said, oh, man, we didn't see you in a while. I said, yeah, man, I went on vacation. I went home to St. Thomas, So we're playing basketball, and then we took a break. And one of the guys said, where you went? You went Morant Bay? You went Yalas? I was like, no, St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands. He was like, what? Where that? And he asked me where it was. This was years ago. So I had to explain to him. And this is when I realized that they thought all along I was a Jamaican. Another situation that happened, and this is probably more like it. I was in South Florida where I was living at the time, and I was hanging out with one of my Jamaican friends in a place known as a swap shop. So for you Jamaicans who are listening right now, you probably know where I'm talking about. So we're sitting in the swap shop talking to my Jamaican friend. He sold at this open air market. That's what it's more or less like. It's like an open air, um, partially open air flea market. So we're sitting there talking, just shooting the breeze, comparing notes. I had just come back from Jamaica. I'll tell you about Jamaica in a minute in terms of how many times I've been there. So we're sitting down there talking to one another. This lady came over and she wanted to buy something from him. And I kind of heard a bit of an accent from her speaking. And I said, "Excuse me, ma'am, you from Jamaica?" I don't know if it was me who asked her or he who, I think he was the one who actually asked her. I think he said something along the line where I guess he thought she was Jamaican just by the few words that she said. And I guess he spoke to her in a way that will indicate that she's a Jamaican and would understand what he's saying. But I think he did ask her outright which part of Jamaica she came from. And there was this look, this dead stare at him, almost as if to say, "How dare you call me a Jamaican?" And you have to understand, this was back in the early 90s, I think. And at the time in South Florida, saying you were Jamaican was not exactly a pleasant thing in some places because of all the antics that were going on at the time. Um, just put it this way, back in those days it was like almost like Jamaicans had a bad name in South Florida for reasons beyond most Jamaicans' understanding or beyond their scope, so to speak. And what I mean by beyond their scope, beyond them being involved in anything, their reputation came from a few riffraffs that created a problem, and people used to just look at Jamaicans in a particular way. Anyway, she took offense to that. And at the time, I didn't quite understand why, because I had to put all this together over the years to try to make some sense of it, which is what I'm doing here right now, or trying to make some sense of it, or trying to explain what I have found out could be the root problems or whatever the issues may be. Now, again, I am not a Jamaican, but I have been to Jamaica about, I want to say upwards of 15 times, probably more, close to 20. I used to go down to Jamaica practically every December, from since 1992 to 2007. So I used to go down there pretty often. And when I went to Jamaica, I did not stay in the resorts. I didn't go to Ochi. I didn't go to Montego Bay and stay in a resort somewhere all inclusive. I went to Jamaica. I went to and stayed in, mingled with the folks in Christiana, Jamaica. People in Porus, people in Mandeville, Alligator Pond, Comfort Hall, all those areas. I've been every single parish in Jamaica, believe it or not, except Hanover, which I'm still surprised I've never been to Negril. But I've been to all of them. And I operated a business down there. And there's some people in this video who are watching this video right now, or who may be watching this video, are familiar with who I am to know that I know what I'm talking about. And reason being, I was married to a Jamaican. So I frequented Jamaica pretty often. There were some times I went down there twice in 1 year. And the business I was involved in, I had to deal with the everyday single people just like every day. So I learned a lot about Jamaican culture, which is not much different from ours. But of course, there's still some nuances and some differences there. I picked up how to understand patois, understood it clearly, had no issues with it, could communicate like that also. So I really had no issues. Been all over the place, and I'm the type of person that when I go to a place, I get engrossed in the place. It got to the point where a lot of Jamaicans used to say, "Boy, Jamaica better than me," because I went to Portland, Yalas, Bogwalk, Falmouth, Milk River Bath, Akampong, Balaclava, Savlamar, Lover's Leap, Treasure Beach, of course, Kingston, Portmore, St. Mary's, all these places I've been up and down, concerts, hanging out, visiting, just doing all sorts of different things. So I'm not saying all of this to say that I am a Jamaican and I know absolutely everything about Jamaica. I'm definitely not saying that. But to some degree, I have some experience with the country, and I have some level of authority in terms of what I may be speaking about here. So I just want to get that out of the way. So anyway, what happened along the way was when I would tell people that I was with a Jamaican, people from the other Caribbean islands, it's almost like you would hear this, almost like, whoa, good for you. Couldn't have been me, type of thing. And could never understand why. I eventually kind of found out why some people felt that way. But this was basically what was going on. But then over the years, because I have so many Jamaican friends, and I still that is still dear to me. My business partner is a Jamaican. He is who actually introduced me to my new wife of 5 years. He was the one that introduced me to her, and she's from Guyana. So I still get along very well. Jamaica is a place that I will always love. It's a place that I always would love to go to. I have no issues with Jamaicans on a whole. I have no problems with the island. I pretty much know how to move about the place and what is accepted, what isn't, and so forth. But anyway, this would happen where people from the other islands, again, when they would speak with a particular accent, people would say, hey, you from Jamaica? And you would see the offense sometimes. And normally you would see statuses on Facebook like, Jamaica is not the only island in the Caribbean. Because you would tell people, hey, I'm from St. Vincent. Is that near like Montego Bay? It's like, oh, God. Or you would say something like, yeah, I come from St. Croix. And I'd be like, is that near Kingston, man? It's like, no, there are other islands in the Caribbean with a similar culture to that of Jamaicans. There are going to be differences, mind you, but you may notice that some people may sound alike. People from St. Vincent and people from Antigua, to me, sound a lot like people from Jamaica. You have to kind of like listen really carefully before you can pick up that they're not from Jamaica or they're, or the other way around. So this is one thing that generally happens. So people from the other Caribbean islands sometimes feel offended when people mistake them for being a Jamaican. Now you would think that would be somewhat flattering, considering the worldwide reputation that Jamaicans have on a positive side. You would think that would be like, hey, great, he thinks I'm a Jamaican, that's great. But a lot of people get offended in regard to that. And I think it has a lot to do with this other thing that happens. Sometimes when you speak to Jamaicans and you tell them where you're from, hey, I'm from Antigua, I'm from St. Kitts, I'm from St. Vincent, I'm from St. Lucia, they would say something like, oh, you come from a small island, them. And you're sitting there like, what do they mean by small island? Now, I think with Jamaicans, I think with some of them, they actually mean physically, geographically, you come from a smaller island in relation to Jamaica. But I think the way it comes off to some people from other Caribbean islands, and maybe some Jamaicans may mean this. This is what the people from the other Caribbean islands hear. Oh, you come from one of those insignificant islands out there that nobody knows where it is and that it exists. One of those islands? And I think that sense of dismissal, that sense of you're small, nobody really knows who you are. We Jamaicans, I mean, everybody knows Bob Marley, everybody knows reggae music, everybody knows jerk chicken, everybody knows Usain Bolt. I mean, who are you guys? We don't know anything about you. So I think that is sometimes where the bone of contention sometimes come in. So I just wanted to just explain that to show you where that comes off and where that comes over. Now I know there's some Jamaicans on here watching this video be like, bye, make them galang, go ahead. We're not interested in how y'all feel. We're not interested in how y'all think or whatever. We don't really care how y'all feel. But I'm just giving you an idea for those of you who are receptive to what I'm saying, that you can say, okay, I could understand that. I see what's going on. Now, I have some Jamaican friends still close to me. And one thing that I've always done, and I'm talking about some dear friends, I've always made sure that I've talked to them and explained to them where I come from, the similarities in our culture, the things that we eat that are similar to one another, even certain words that we say. And we go back and forth and we'll be like, yeah, we call it this. Oh, y'all call it chocho? We call it Christophine. Oh, y'all call it this? We call it that. And we go back and forth and everything. So there's a great deal of respect between me and them to me. But for those Jamaicans who may not want to, or who may not get this, I'm just trying to explain. And I'll give you a perfect example of something else I'm referring to. One year, I went to Jamaica and I went to Turtle Tower Beach in Ocho Rios. While I was there, I happened to have a camera, a handheld camera, and back then those things were not a big thing. You didn't, I don't know if you found much of them around Jamaica or whatever, but it was like a luxury back then. This is when these things cost thousands of dollars. So I had one, and I went to Turtle Tower Beach, and I remember I had some footage in there from the island of St. Kitts, which is where I was raised and which is where my father was from. So I had the footage, and I'm holding the camera up, and I was on the beach, and then the people who were with me, they were looking at it, and I was just showing it to them and everything. But before you know, the crowd of people gathered around, and they're looking at the camera, and they're looking, and it dawned on me. I said, you know what? Let me ask them if they know where this is. And I said, where is this? Does anybody here know? They were like, oh, that's a Portland, that man, a Portland. I said, no. Why, see that's Falmouth, or that's this place, or this is this place, or that place. And I was just listening to them go back and forth. And then that's when I said, it is no place in Jamaica. A lie I tell. I said, no, it is not in Jamaica. I said, this is the island of St. Kitts. And in that footage, there was a certain area in St. Kitts where I showed people had it was like a Friday. I think I remember taking the picture, the footage, and they were with their pans, and they were playing Peter Tosh music or whatever. So everyone looking at the video was just so sure it was somewhere in Jamaica. It gave me an opportunity for a teachable moment. And I was like, this is where this island is at. This is what it's like. This is how they speak. This is what we do. And we're very similar we do things very similar to what you do here. We listen to the same type of music. We have great like Sunday afternoons, people playing country music. We do the very same exact thing. The way we carry ourselves, the foods we eat, the way we prepare it, pretty similar. And you have to understand, we come from a common geographical place, Africa. So we came over, and they may have dropped off your cousin over in St. Vincent, but then dropped off your sister over in Jamaica. So there's a lot of similarities. But as human beings, we like to focus on the differences more than we do the similarities. Anyway, one other thing I want to explain in all of this is it's the two Jamaicans, and this could be two different videos. Let me try to see if I can get this in real fast. One of the things I observed, I went to South Florida in 1987 or so. When I got down there, I knew a handful of Jamaicans. For example, like Charlie's Pastries, I think opened up around that time, maybe a little bit before, a little after, when I got down there. So a lot of Jamaicans used to congregate around there. I used to go there because, again, I settled in an area where there were a lot of Jamaicans. The Lauderhill area of Florida, where a lot of people may be familiar with. They call it Jamaica Hill. So I settled in that area. So, but when I got there, it was like, you mentioned Jamaican, and it was like, Jamaicans, oh my goodness, you got to be scared of them, And part of the reason for this was when I went down there, the Jamaican gang life, the organized crime part of Jamaica, Jamaicans, had started to make a name for themselves in the South Florida area, to the point where they started showing up on the police radar. I remember I would sit home, and I remember there was like a big shootout at some crack house down in Miami somewhere. And I think there was another one at a party where some young girl got killed. They just came in and showered the place with bullets, hence the term the shower posse, or something along that line. So all of this was going on then. So when you said Jamaicans back then, it came with a certain side eye or certain look, like every Jamaican is up to something, every Jamaican is involved in like murdering and so forth. That was the reputation that was going on back then. Now, it took me years to kind of put all of this together. I used to also work with a few Jamaicans, and there were two Jamaicans that I work with. And this is where you can see what I'm going to explain right now. One of them was from Mandeville, one was from Kingston. The one from Mandeville, she came over to South Florida back in, I think, the mid-70s sometimes. The other Jamaican came over sometime in the early 90s or somewhere along that line. And there was a difference in their personality, in their personas, in the way that they carried themselves, in the way that they spoke. After I started putting two and two together, I started to kind of try to formulate me with my observations, trying to see how things worked out. Then it dawned on me that in the mid 70s, when Michael Manley was still Prime Minister of Jamaica, a lot of upper class, rich Jamaicans, educated, privileged Jamaicans, thought he was going to go ahead and steer the country towards communism because of his friendship with Fidel Castro. So because they figured he was going to do this, and they figured communism meant that he was going to come after their money, or socialism, he was going to come after their money and redistribute it to the poor folks down below, they got scared. And they voiced their opinions or voiced their concerns. To which Michael Manley, I'm paraphrasing here, basically told them there are 4 flights to Miami every day. Take one. In other words, telling them if y'all want to leave, y'all can leave. And a lot of them took that up, and they left, and they moved to the South Florida area. So now these are your more privileged Jamaicans, your more educated, upper crust Jamaicans and so forth, people with money. So when they came to the South Florida area, they more or less moved in, just blended in a nice big neighborhood, had their nice homes, had the money to send their kids to private school. They were doctors, they were lawyers, they were nurses, and so forth. So there wasn't too much of a ruffle with them. They just blended in and assimilated just fine like everyone else. As a matter of fact, a lot of them, because they had the money to travel back and forth all the time anyway, so it wasn't like Miami or Fort Lauderdale was like, whoa, like shocked them or anything like that. But a few years later, once political violence started to grip Jamaica, and you had all the nonsense that was going on down there, to the point where almost 900 or over 900 people were killed in the 1980 elections, a lot of Jamaicans fled to South Florida. But a lot of them who fled didn't come from the upper crust area of Jamaica. Well, I'm not saying that there weren't some of them, but a lot of them who fled were people that came from the garrison areas, the rougher areas of Jamaica, the Tivoli Gardens, the Trench Town, the Rima, these areas. And some of these people who fled were people who were involved in the political violence, may have even killed people or escaped being killed. They ran over to South Florida. As they go over, some of them went over to escape the violence. Others came over to follow them because they want to inflict vengeance on them, or revenge, because they may have killed somebody in their neighborhood, may have killed a family member or something like that, and they follow them over. Now you have a different group of Jamaicans who are coming over. These Jamaicans are less polished, and I'm not saying that everyone from Tivoli Gardens or everyone from Rima or everyone from those areas, I'm not saying that they're all crazy and that they all want to shoot someone. Please do not misunderstand me. What I'm saying, though, is that this new group of Jamaicans who came over were your more rough and tumble type, the type that had to survive every single day, that may have grown up in some sort of poverty, and the only way they knew how to make it in life was to be aggressive, to go get them. And they came over, so they tend to be a little bit more louder, a little bit more rambunctious. They settled more in the regular everyday neighborhoods. So you start hearing the reggae music, you start smelling the weed, and they carry themselves with a certain flamboyance, a certain kind of confidence, because this is how they had to be to survive in the communities they came from. So as a result, getting really windy out here, so I'm going to have to bring this to an end real soon. So as a result, this new group came over. And because they were so much more vocal, so much more out there, and of course, they did bring a lot of good with them, the food, the cooking, the charisma, a new style, a new flair and everything, that eventually people wanted to copy. So when they came over, this new group came over, and they more or less became representative to a lot of people became representative of Jamaican culture. So they saw the more aggressive Jamaican, the more loud, the more rambunctious, the more out there type of, sometimes, maybe hot-tempered, ill-tempered, ready to go at it. Because again, a lot of that you may look at as being bad in terms of Jamaicans is a lot of the positive things that has gotten them to where they are. They push forward. They don't take no for an answer. They get knocked down. They get back up. They go forward. They do whatever they have to do to make things work. So those group of Jamaicans came over. Now, the interesting thing about it, the other group of Jamaicans that came over earlier, a lot of times had a problem with them, because a lot of times those upper crust Jamaicans, they already had a problem with them in Jamaica anyway, because again, they stayed in their big homes up in Beverly Hills. They looked down at the garrison areas like those peons down there, those riffraffs down there. So coming over, they now see this group of Jamaicans now living nearby, or they're running into them, and they're like so they're so mild mannered, and they try to subdue the patois, and then you have this other Jamaican coming in, "Why, where the food there, and they're like, oh Lord. So I used to hear the other lady always saying sometimes, the one that I worked with, when she used to see the other guy coming, because you would hear him before you see him. So when he would show up, she would be like, oh Lord of mercy, boy, she couldn't deal with him because he was just so out there with it. So a lot of times, it happens with the Haitians also, but a lot of times what used to happen back then is that those other Jamaicans, the more out there type of Jamaicans, became the representatives for all of Jamaicans. Not fair, but that's basically what happened. And I think those are the Jamaicans who pushed the Jamaican culture forward. And those are the Jamaicans that a lot of people got to know. Now, of course, we're talking about, 2 generations ago? So now you have their children, their grandchildren. They're much more assimilated. They're acclimated to their new culture. They will still be very proud of their Jamaicanness, but of course they've kind of, blended in with the culture around them, so they may not be as out there with it on their sleeves. They may be proud of Jamaica, mind you, and proud of the Jamaican roots, but they might not be walking down the street with like a red, white, and green flannel shirt or anything along that line. So it was always rather tough. It was always rather interesting back in those days, but it helped to make a very dynamic South Florida for me. So I'm going to bring this thing to an end because my next door, my Antigua neighbor, is coming down here right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and let him come through. But you guys make sure you comment, like, dislike, and make sure you share and subscribe with a friend, okay? You guys take care. All right, man. I'm good. Everything good. So yeah, he's going to be coming up here in a few minutes. I got to get up out of this driveway. I came outside because my 2-year-old son would probably terrorize me inside the house. So let me get on up. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please get down there in the comment section and comment. I know some of you guys are going to cheer me out, but I really hope this creates a positive discussion, okay? You guys take care. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until the next time, this is Caribbeanology, and you guys are my Caribbeanologists. Take care.